Today we're going to talk about us versus them. And what I mean by this is a clear division when teams tend to outsource in software development. You have this division between the internal team and the outsourced or the external team. Difference could be in knowledge sharing, amount of access that they get, the way they treat and communicate with one another. The more of these division, the more of these barriers you have, the more friction you're going to have in that relationship and in the way that the teams and the team members communicate to one another. If you hear phrases like they messed up the integration, or I won't touch their code, or their module doesn't fit ours, it's usually a bad sign. It's usually a sign that management needs to step in, needs to align the culture between internal and external and remove, in an ideal case scenario, any divisions that exist between those teams. And I've been both on the buyer side. I've been part of it as an internal team where we wouldn't touch the external team's code. And I've also seen it as a seller, right? So as a seller of outsourcing services where the client has an internal team and sometimes we won't get all the accesses or all the knowledge or all the cards, basically. So my suggestion here is twofold. First, software development is a team sport. It's not poker, so you don't have to hide your cards. There's no cards to hide. You need alignment between teams. You need knowledge sharing. You need free-flowing communication. Don't treat teams differently. So the internal team shouldn't treat the external team differently, and vice versa. There should be this sense of camaraderie between the teams, and in terms of access, in terms of communication, in terms of things that they can get their hands to. There might be legal restrictions, so take what I say with a grain of salt, but if not, then you need to treat teams equally, and also increase access to knowledge and increase collaboration between the two. The more these teams need to depend on one another and the more they can work with each other, the less frictions you'll have. And also, number 4 is kind of mix and match modules. So sometimes you'll have, internal team will work on module A and external team will work on module B. And then when you try to match and something doesn't work, they're just going to blame each other, right? It's kind of what happens at that level. So try to mix internal team and external team works on A, and another internal team and external team work on module B. That way the responsibility is kind of shared. And then when they integrate, they're not pointing fingers as much anymore because of not being in the same geolocation, but they'll try to find a more common language. Generally, as a 5th point, maybe try to just invest a lot in remote culture and working remotely. There's many resources and tactics you can use to improve productivity in a remote setup. So the more you do that, the better you'll be for it. And then point number 2, increase in-person visits. Right? So 1 in-person visit is worth 1,000 Zoom calls. That's kind of the new saying. So if you can go to their location with some of your stakeholders or visit some of their team to your location, just cross-traveling, especially if you're in a proximity in a similar time zone, do that. The money and the time will be returned to you by 10x probably. You can communicate and you can express and elaborate complex idea in an in-person setup in a way that you can't do online, unfortunately, or at least unless you're extremely elaborate, it's just better to meet in person. So have that as could be bi-monthly or quarterly or some bi-regular travel schedule so that the team keeps fresh and up to date with what's going on. So that's it on us versus them. So this division is, and in a worst case scenario, it could be a project killer. In a best case scenario, it creates a lot of friction and unproductivity and frustrations. So when you notice that and you're a stakeholder, whether you're a CEO, CTO, or even an engineering manager, try to address it for the sake of the collaboration. And if not, then kind of be wary of this division because it will cause, and it might cause problems to the project.